And we back, and we back, and we back. How we feeling?
Back to back, like Jordan 96 and 97.
Whoa!
Whoa!
It is
Hey,
about time
man.
to kick off the defending title run for the Kansas City Chiefs. Two-time defending champs, world champs. I don't care what Noah Lyles says, baby.
Yeah, and it's we've been kind of hyping this up for the last couple weeks or whatever it may be, and then the group message today kind of got a little live, little action. Got a little fired up for the
Juicy.
Royals today. End up losing, but they got things a little kicked off for us, and then the conversation went into the Chiefs a little bit, and everybody's getting hyped up for a season opener at Arrowhead. We're dropping the back-to-back banner next Thursday.
Oh yeah,
Let's
baby.
go.
No, it's a good time to be a fan. I know you and I, we got the season ticket holder gifts in, the twice a paperweight for the boys here. So that was fun getting that ring and throwing it up on the shelf. A lot of good stuff today. A lot of good stuff to dive into today. Obviously, training camp has come to a close. The preseason is over. It is now fantasy draft season for the next 10 days as we get into the kickoff of the NFL season, headlined by Chiefs and Ravens. But before we do all of that, quick shout out to our partners at the Atlas Saloon in Excelsior Springs. Awesome stuff going on there. I'm sure they're going to have a big party. We'll get some information from Keith and Jim and the rest of the gang over there so we can share that with you as we gear up for the season kickoff. But in downtown Excelsior Springs, there's no better place to watch a Chiefs game, and certainly no better place to grab a beer than the Atlas Saloon. So love it. We'll do a couple shows out there again this year as we get through the season. But man, let's talk about Travis Kelce. This guy has his fingers in a lot of different pies. We'll put it that way,
Yes.
right? He's showing up in Happy Gilmore. He's got the podcast going. He has some other acting credits that are going to be coming out on the IMDb page here soon, but struck a big time podcast deal, 3 years, $100 million with Amazon. Wowza. That is like
Big deal.
peak. That's the peak.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be making more money doing that than he will be playing football. But
Yeah. Him and Jason both.
he's obviously setting himself up and has set himself up for a soft landing when it comes to what retirement's going to look like for Travis Kelce. Obviously, nothing is going to slow down for the guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's just not going to be playing football, which is exciting for me. I like to see when guys that I've been rooting for my whole life or for a large, significant period of my life continue to do things where I can continue to follow along with them and still have fun with those guys, even when they're not playing at Arrowhead on Sundays or Mondays or Wednesdays or Thursdays or Fridays or Saturdays.
Insert day here except for Tuesday.
Yeah.
No, and you said it right. He's going to have a nice soft landing after football. I mean, it's going to be a cush landing for him getting out of football and into a podcast studio. Pretty awesome to see him climb to new heights with this podcast deal and really just set. I mean, this is one of the earlier deals that we've seen eclipse kind of 100 million, and you don't get that just being the best sports podcast. You got to be a top podcast across the board.
That's right.
What they're doing over there, credit the success to whatever you want to credit it to, but they still have to go out there and put that show on. So pretty sick knowing that the Chiefs brand is going to get pushed through that forever.
Yeah, right. No, agreed 100%. And those memories will live on forever as we, as they continue to talk about those memories of back-to-back Super Bowls and Patrick Mahomes being drafted and different things with Andy Reid and stuff like that. So that's exciting for Chiefs fans as well.
100%. So we'll get into some of the roster cuts that have come down the pipe from the preseason. You had to trim the roster down. All 32 NFL teams did. by 3 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday, I want to say it was. Now, there are still some shock waves moving throughout the NFL from the different cuts. Okay, this player gets cut, but that's not the end of the story. Even if you made the roster after initial cuts, someone else gets cut somewhere else. The team decides to grab that player, and then all of a sudden your spot's in jeopardy. So
Yep.
that's the worst part of it, I think, for the players is like you made the roster on Tuesday, but on Wednesday that could totally flip on you, and all of a sudden you're a free agent or you're on the practice squad.
Right. Yeah. And really, I mean, making the 53 man is kind of that curve, if you want to say that, where a
Yeah,
lot of guys can take that breath. But like you said, man, somebody pops up on waivers, and it's a gap the Chiefs feel we need to fill.
hmm
Then they go out and jump on that guy, and maybe cut the receivers down to 6, or drop a tight end to pick up a linebacker or something like that. Those
right.
things can happen where somebody else could come in and have a have an impact on special teams where somebody else might not. And I mean, that's just the game. A lot of guys that have played
True.
in the league and that do play in the league talk about what cut day is like, what the trim day is like when everybody trims down to 53 man, and how it's a pretty emotional day where you see a lot of guys work their ass off for months trying to make a spot, and just come up short. And so it's the name of the game. It's a business at the end of the day. And looking at it from the Chiefs lens, we're trying to three-peat here. So
Right.
it is all business. We got to go out and make sure we have the best available team on the football field every single weekend, that we strap up the chin strap and make sure we're ready to rock and roll.
100%. No, absolutely. And surrounding the guys that make the 53-man roster with those guys on the practice squad are what helps push that competition in those practice scenarios, and ultimately having all of that talent all the way through. It's a big deal. Now, there were some surprise names that I saw. You and I, we've had a lot of conversations going through the off season here. There were some names I did not expect to see on this cut list. Now, eventually they do have to make some tough decisions.
Yep.
But I think one of the bigger surprises for me, I don't know about you, but it was the cut of Justin Ross.
Yeah, I personally, and we talked about this last week, where the wide receiver room was volatile, man, where there
hmm
were 10 guys, maybe say 9 guys, where I could see them playing on the football team, going into next week against Baltimore. And Justin Ross is a guy that's set on the practice squad for a couple of years now, and still hasn't been able to punch his ticket into snagging balls from Patrick Mahomes on the weekends. So yeah, that's one for me as well. A lot of people were surprised by Reese Zammit didn't get the call.
Yep.
I really wasn't surprised by that one. I don't think there's room for him on the team. I think there's a lot more skilled players on special teams, and then the running back room is packed. With that addition of Samaje Perine, which we'll get into a little bit. But one of the most notable names for me that got cut from the team was Lucas Niang. And that
Yeah.
was a guy, again, we talked about him last week being rotational at the right tackle. If right tackle didn't pan out for us this year, or if something, if we had to shuffle around the line a little bit, where that guy could be a starter. And now we're
Right.
talking about this guy not even being on the roster.
Well, Jawan Taylor had that shoulder injury, and it was like, okay, who comes in and fills the shoes? Is it going to be Niang? Is it going to be Wanya Morris, who's moving over to that side of things? So, I mean, that was definitely a concern, and it felt like Niang was one of those depth pieces, or at least he had been. He was a
Agreed.
full-time starter for a chunk of his time here in Kansas City.
Yeah.
But with those notable cuts, right? Nico Remigio, another one that we talked a lot about from a wide receiver standpoint. Deneric Prince, he gets a lot of love. Amani Bailey, TCU running back. Those kinds of guys that that were on the bubble ultimately to make the roster. Those guys all ended up luckily finding a place on the practice squad. So Niang, Remigio, Ross, Dion Bush, the safety, all of those guys ended up making the practice squad. So they're going to hang around. There's still a chance that they could get elevated up into the 53 man because you
Pretty good
never know
chance.
what kind of injuries are going to happen. Maybe you
Yeah.
make a personnel change to game plan for a specific opponent. All of those things are definitely on the table and part of really just part of the strategy that goes into coaching a team like this.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And really, I think that goes a long ways to say about the depth of the team overall and what we have on the 53-man roster, but what extends to that practice squad, and that we have guys that have started games that are sitting on that practice squad. Dion
Yeah.
Bush, for example, he's
Yeah.
played a lot of football in his life, man. Hell of a safety, and having him at depth on the practice squad is kind of a reassuring feeling as a Chiefs fan.
hmm These guys want to be a part of it, right? A guy like Dion Bush, who started with Chicago, came over to Kansas City, had some quality time here as well. He wants to be around a championship caliber team and have an opportunity to come in and make an impact on what could be a third straight Super Bowl run for this squad. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? There's a reason why promising talents like, Justin Ross or Niang are open to coming back, really. They're familiar with the system, they're comfortable here.
Yep.
A lot of those guys, their rookie contracts are still being paid for, even though they're on that practice squad, and then they'll get practice squad pay too. But like that definitely helps, with keeping those guys around and knowing that you can lean on them. Now, the scary part is they can get poached at any time from some of these other teams, but um, pretty good stuff overall. I mean, it just shows how competitive everything is really with this team. Sky Moore in the wide receiver room, I think a big surprise for both you and I. In the running back room, there's actually been some signings. So on that side of things, Samaje Perine got picked up today. We're recording on Wednesday. You guys will hear this Thursday. Samaje Perine, big time threat in the wide receiver room or in the receiving game.
Yep.
Came in and put up, what was it, about 400 yards, something along those lines last year, out in Denver. So getting that kind of a running back here in Kansas City who can shoulder the load in the passing game, that's not something that we've had the luxury of outside of Jerick McKinnon. And it was a
Yep.
question mark coming in to this season because we didn't retain him.
Well said. Yeah, I think Samaje Perine is going to threaten CEH on what reps he does take. You see a lot of CEH reps come from the passing game, not from a pass blocking standpoint, but from him running routes and obvious passing downs, whether it's a screen or he lines up in the flex there in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
You see that a lot from CEH as a third down back. And I think, Samaje Perine, maybe not for the first 4 games or so, but I think he is going to elevate himself to that 2 spot. And just like we talked about today, that's a guy that runs hard. And he ran hard when he was in Cincy, notably behind Joe Mixon. Great third down back for Cincy at that time. Again, hell of a threat out of the backfield at that time in the pass game. And I think the only question mark for him is age, but he's in a great spot in Kansas City where we're not asking him to take the ball 20 to 25 times, right? We know that's Isaiah Pacheco's role in this offense now after last year. And so, have a supplemental role, take care of yourself, make sure you're healthy throughout the season, and be that guy when we need you, and make those plays. And Samaje Perine was a stud in college down at Oklahoma. We keep stacking this team with Oklahoma
Your boy.
guys, and so it'll be fun to have him on the team. I'm pretty excited, and again, like I said, man, I could see him being the number 2 back, by the second quarter of the season.
Yeah, no, that's I hope they kind of take the slow approach like they did with McKinnon in years past, right? Give him a little bit of the workload in the first couple games, let him gear up. He's still got to learn the system, and we're kicking this thing off in 8 days. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve and a reduced workload naturally from that. But I hope it's a situation where the Chiefs are able to maintain him going into the playoffs so that he can really step up and make an impact in the moments that are going to matter the most for the team, especially in the face of any kind of injury. Knowing that you have that kind of support in the backfield is huge for sure. Um, Obviously, I think we talked about this last week. JuJu Smith-Schuster brought back into the fold, talked about a lot of those receivers, so we won't spend too much time there. But the Chiefs were wheeling and dealing.
Yep.
Made a couple of trades for some support players, some relievers, if you will. We're in baseball season still technically. Some guys who can come in off the bench and contribute. So Peyton Hendershot, tight end out of Dallas, Chiefs sent a late round pick over for him. And the same situation comes from Cam Thomas. Now, Cam Thomas, in my opinion, is the more interesting person that was brought over. And this is the same scenario we talked about just a minute ago, right? Player makes the roster, organization makes a move. Now all of a sudden you're losing your roster spot. You're finding yourself on the practice squad or in free agency. Chiefs wheel and deal, grabbed Cam Thomas, former third round pick from Arizona, who showed flashes his rookie year, but really hadn't. He's in a position where he needs to show out.
Yep.
Basically, but coming out of the draft, he was one of the more highly touted defensive ends and a guy that was seen as a potential playmaker coming out of San Diego State. So if anyone's going to get the most out of him, it's going to be Joe Cullen and Steve Spagnuolo and everything that they do on the defensive side of the ball to pull that talent and play to those key strengths, even if it's just get Cam Thomas in on a couple third down reps because he can be a little more versatile. He also can play inside as well at the tackle position, so he has versatility there. Where if it's a situation where Chris Jones is flexing out to the defensive end, we got a stunt with him going into the middle. He's going to be able to hold his own with those interior offensive linemen too. So love that versatility. The Chiefs love it, whether it's a defensive lineman or a defensive back. I think that's a big time move for us from a depth perspective, and could potentially reap some solid rewards.
Agree. And really making moves like this is not not really Brett Veach's MO. Really he's more of a free agent pickup kind of a guy as it comes
Right.
through towards, training camp and towards the later end of the preseason. So it's interesting to see him make moves like this and accept those calls or make those calls. I don't know what that situation looked like for those couple of moves, but kind of makes you a little bit excited. Anytime there's trades and stuff like that, you get excited and thinking about what the improvement is. Unless it's a pretty notable guy that we've seen on the Chiefs team play ball. But Dan, overall, let's look at the 53-man roster. What are your overall thoughts on the team that is set to go into Arrowhead and play Baltimore Thursday?
Man, top to bottom, I am still really excited about the depth that the Chiefs have at each and every one of these positions, particularly in the wide receiver room. I think top to bottom, you're looking at a guy like Hollywood Brown, who's a proven commodity, Rashee Rice, who is due for a big year two. No suspension in sight there. Xavier Worthy, first-round pick. And, of course, JuJu, who we won a Super Bowl with as a wide receiver one against the Eagles. So all guys that are familiar with the system or guys that have a lot of moxie behind them, if you will. So that's really exciting. The running back room, there was a question around, okay, who is going to come in and catch passes for this team out of the backfield? I think that was answered when the Chiefs brought in Perine. Tight end really deep, offensive line really deep, got a lot of solid players there, even with the loss of Lucas Niang.
Yep.
You got to have talent backfilling that if he's not going to be on the roster. And then
Agreed.
really all of the defense is very well maintained from last year. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, big loss, do not get me wrong, okay?
Yep.
He was a big time contributor, but they backfilled this defensive back room really well in the draft, and drafting Jaden Hicks. Shamari Connor has shown a lot of promise in his ability to step up.
Yep.
Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, those guys have both shown flashes in their short careers too. as much of a loss as I think L'Jarius Sneed is and Willie Gay is, because he had some hustle plays too, this defense is pretty well maintained. I mean, turning a roster over from one year to another, you see a lot more casualties usually.
Agreed.
Um, it's really exciting. Honestly, it's really exciting. I like the moves that Brett Veach made. They're always evaluating. Even if it's not their own team, they're grabbing other players, seeing where he can make those shrewd moves. We saw it a couple years ago, trading a late round pick for or a player that was drafted in the later rounds for Charvarius Ward, who ended up balling out for us here in Kansas City. He's made other moves like that that have paid off. Some haven't, right? Can't bat 1,000 in that department. But
Yep.
I'm excited about the moves that were made. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I mean, as far as the offense goes, I think they're going to have to prove what they are, right? After last season, there's a lot of question marks around what that offense was capable of. Now, obviously, they took care of business when business needed to be taken care of, right? So, there's no question mark about the leadership that's on that offense. But, I think it's going to be roster. We look good on paper, but let's see, what that turns out to be. And quite honestly, the Chiefs play Baltimore, and then we play Cincinnati at home right after that. The following Sunday, the 10 days after that, the following week 2, and that's a very tough 2-game stretch to start the season, right? So I don't expect the Chiefs to come out and lob 30 on both of those teams. That's just not realistic. Typically, Andy Reid offenses come out fairly slow when coming out of the season. And so I expect the same thing. I don't think this is going to be a 450-yard game from Patrick Mahomes with 3 touchdowns, no picks, a couple of touchdowns from Isaiah Pacheco. That's just not the game we're going to see. But what I do expect from the other side of the ball is very similar to what you were talking about. And I really wanted to hit on the secondary and the linebacking core. Secondary, I'm not going to, say everything you just said because you said everything I wanted to say. Jerry Sneed was a huge loss for that defensive back core, but we have backfilled and drafted secondary guys extremely well. And Spags has proven that he can develop those guys into very good football players, sound football players, smart football players. And that's really what you end up having to be in the secondary. You have to be smart and you have to make the right decision every single play, because you make one mistake, you step your foot, the wrong way one time, you're crisped up on the edge. So secondary, I think we backfilled extremely well. The defensive line depth is there. I think getting a couple guys back on the edge, as far as a Mini Hugh, he's going to be a huge guy to have back on the edge. Obviously, he's on the PUP list to start the season. But as soon as we get him back, it's going to be huge to have him on the edge. Defensive line, depth is there. Obviously, Chris Jones is going to be the anchor of that D-line. Now, looking at the linebackers, I think that's where a little bit of question mark comes in. With the loss of Willie Gay, we had probably the best depth of any linebacking core and the best play of any linebacking core last year. I'm not talking about stars making play. We didn't have any Roquan Smiths or anything like that going on. But as far as overall linebacker play, from the 3 positions at linebacker, we were at least top 3. And I think we got better at linebacker with Drew Tranquill starting over, if Willie Gay was still here. But we lost that depth that we had with Drew Tranquill being behind, being that number 4 linebacker that we had last year. So I think that's the only question mark. And obviously with Nick Bolton's history of injuries over the last year, that raises a couple of question marks for me as far as the linebacking core. And then when you look at special teams, I mean, Dave Toub does what he does every single year. He creates a special teams. He puts guys in the right position. And again, he's just like Spags. Like, Dave Toub is incredibly smart with special teams. He's orchestrated in how he goes about special teams. And that's, a majority of what makes him so successful as a special teams coach. So I think we're locked in at special teams. Obviously, we got Bucker signed the extension this offseason. He's lights out. And then the punt god, it'd be exciting to see what he gets done for really his first NFL season this year.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a unit that you're not too worried about, right? Those two guys kicking the ball. Um, Obviously on the kick return side, Tobe has plenty of
Yep.
options for guys that he can plug in back there at any given time. I mean, we saw him do it year after year, whether it was guest spot from Tyreek Hill to flip the field real quick or plug in Tony, Sky Moore, and, you know, insert player here for that scenario. So um, those are all key decisions when they're making these cuts and making these final evaluations. And the roster's never going to be concrete moving through the season, but at least Chiefs fans can rest easy knowing that this roster is pretty well set. I mean, last year coming in, there was question marks. The year before, question marks there with the departure of Tyreek Hill. Um, I mean, man, you got to feel so comfortable and so confident in what this team's going to be able to do going out there, just top to bottom. It's exciting.
Yep. No better way to show what you got than playing Baltimore week 1 and Cincinnati week 2, though. Let's
Hey,
get it, man. I'm fired up. What a stretch.
it's double up on the AFC North, get them out of the way, and lock up the conference after week 2. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Appreciate everybody listening. Let's go ahead and put a wrap on this as we get into next week. It's live, baby. It's time to start up week 1, get the red on for Red Friday,
Red
and
Wednesday.
really just get excited. What are you
Yeah.
most pumped for before we wrap the show? What are you most excited for getting back out to the stadium?
Two things, and in this order. National anthem, first national anthem of the year. Fired up.
Give me the
And then,
Admiral. I want the Admiral back up there,
dude,
man.
nobody compares in this nation to what he does for the national anthem. And then 2 is dropping the banner, the Super Bowl celebration there on
Come
the
on.
field before the game starts. Yeah, I'm fired up for that.
What more do you
That's me,
want?
man. That's me.
What more do you want? I'm just excited to be around everybody and feel that energy because once the first game you step on the asphalt out there in the parking lot, you start smelling the smokers, you unload the bus, you're looking around, you don't have to say a word.
No,
Everyone's thinking the same thing.
you
We're
got a little,
freaking back, baby.
you got a little hop going on
Oh
out there.
yeah.
You can't stop it.
That's literally what's just flowing through your veins. So
Oh man, that's great, man. Yeah, so we'll be back next week for pre-show for the Baltimore Ravens, baby. Let's get it.
let's get it. Go Chiefs. Everyone enjoy your Labor Day weekend. Peace.